Hello and welcome to Chapter 4. In Chapter 4 we'll actually have two purposes that we'll be addressing. The first is organizational patterns, learning how authors, especially authors of textbooks, put together information in ways that help aid our comprehension. If we know and understand how these organizational patterns work, it will also increase our comprehension. The second piece that we'll be working on in Chapter 4 is to look at a number of different ways of taking notes. We'll pair these different note-taking strategies with each of the organizational patterns, although they can be used in multiple ways. We'll look at how to identify these 7 organizational patterns, and using these organizational patterns, it will help you to determine what you need to remember and what you can safely forget. Because let's face it, none of our instructors expect us to remember absolutely everything that we read. Depending on the organizational pattern used, you'll understand what's important in that particular paragraph to pay attention to and to take notes on. And in terms of taking notes, these notes will help you to review for exams, but they also have a hidden value. You see, when you take the information in from a chapter reading, by simply reading it, it enters into your memory in one mode. But if you take notes on it in a different mode, you'll increase the likelihood of that information transferring to long-term memory. And that's what it's all about. And so then, with this note-taking, it'll help you to save these pieces of information in your long-term memory and enhance the likelihood that you'll do well in your classes and on your tests. So we have 7 different patterns. Pattern number 1 is what's called the definition pattern. And a definition pattern is absolutely one of the most common ones that you'll run into in textbooks. It's hard to imagine almost any class that you'll take that requires a textbook that won't have its own set of vocabulary words. And we know from previous studies that some of those vocabulary words can be pretty common, ordinary, everyday words, but they can be used in a specialized way in the context of a course. The definition pattern is one of the easiest patterns to recognize, and it's often combined with other patterns. So while we'll look at examples that are more pure examples of each of the patterns, do realize that in textbook reading, many times there will be 1 or 2 or sometimes even 3 different patterns used within a paragraph. The definition pattern is one that should always find its way into your notes. I think back to our work with the note-taking strategy of Cornell note-taking paper, and how well that lends itself for a definition pattern. You can put the vocabulary word in the left-hand margin and enter the definition in the right-hand column. So what are some of the key characteristics? Usually the definition pattern will open with the word being defined. Most often that topic sentence is going to be the first sentence in the paragraph. Those people who publish our textbooks are also very good at creating different ways to draw our attention to key vocabulary words. Sometimes they'll use boldface, sometimes they'll annotate the definition of the word off in the margin, they'll use italics, they'll use different colored text. All of these are ways of drawing our attention to the importance of vocabulary and of course their definitions. What follows the word being defined then is a detailed definition. It's always best if you can paraphrase that definition rather than writing it down verbatim from the textbook. The definition pattern can include, in addition to the definition, sometimes it's the word's history. There might be an example of how the word is being used. They might even have words that it's commonly confused with. Lots of different hints on how to understand the definition of the key vocabulary word in question. Let's take a look at an example paragraph. In marketing, the term buyer's remorse refers to a buyer's doubts about whether a purchase made was the right decision. For instance, after purchasing a new and more expensive cell phone, The buyer may wonder if the added features were worth the additional expense and feel guilty about buying the phone. Buyer's remorse is most likely to occur when a person has bought an expensive product that lacks some of the desirable features of competing brands. A consumer experiencing buyer's remorse may attempt to return the product or seek positive information to justify choosing it. So our topic sentence here, what would you say? If you said sentence 1, you're exactly correct. Sentence 1 defines what buyer's remorse is. Sentences 2, 3, and 4 are all major details. Each one of those is a different aspect that helps to give an example of buyer's remorse. So like in the first, in sentence 2, we have that the added features might not be worth the expense. We have the likelihood that the phone might be missing some of the features of another brand, and that leads to buyer's remorse. And last, the consumer might experience buyer remorse and even try to take the product back or otherwise develop an elaborate list of reasons why they really needed the phone. Each one of those being a major detail. So if we color-coded the paragraph, it would look something like this. We have our topic sentence in sentence 1, and we have the 3 reasons why buyer's remorse might occur. The definition pattern does not necessarily, however, have a fixed format. The easiest one to recognize, and I think the kindest and gentlest one for readers, is when the topic sentence occurs first, so you know right away what the term is and what the definition is. But sometimes writers, for effect and to vary the way they present information, might delay giving you the information and give you other possible definitions before introducing you to the actual definition that they're using. That's the case in this next paragraph that will come on the following slide. So the main idea, in other words, tells you how the organizational pattern is used. It's not the other way around. So main idea is always sort of leading the parade, as in this example. The term unconscious is notoriously ambiguous word. Some people think it refers to Freudian repressed memories, memories so upsetting that they must be pushed beneath the consciousness. Others think that it happens during a coma or after being hit on the head or drinking too much. None of these definitions is what is meant in the pages of this book. Instead, the term is used to refer to many things the brain does that are not available to the consciousness. So this is a good example of the topic sentence being delayed until the final sentence of the paragraph. The author instead gets us thinking about the term unconscious and the different ways it can be used in conjunction with repressed memories, after being in a coma. And then there's a reversal transition that occurs in sentence 3 that tells you that none of these definitions is what is meant in the pages of this book. And so you know we're now going to see what is the definition that's going to be applied in this reading. Some note-taking tips for the definition pattern. When you take notes on the definition pattern, your focus needs to be on the definition and perhaps one example of how it's used. And then you can pretty much ignore any other information concerning the word. Again, you're not expected to remember every single small detail, but rather to get the definition and the vocabulary word and perhaps one key example. Definition patterns for note-taking can often be very nicely done up as a concept map. And a concept map is where you show the definition in the center, usually in a circle or boxed in, and then you have spokes that radiate from that central word to identify key characteristics of the word. Kind of like this example. You have your key concept in the center, and then you have the orange boxes would represent major details, and if needed, the green boxes would represent minor details that go on to explain the major details. If you take a look at your book on page 182, in the very first paragraph, toward the end of that paragraph, you'll notice that there are some key words that are in italics to draw your attention. And those are key phrases that often are used in definition patterns. Words like describes, refers to, is known, defined as, called, termed, means, all of those words direct our attention. And those are key phrases that if you're constructing a definition paragraph, you would want to be aware of. And also, if you take a look on page 183 in your text, you'll find an example of a little bit different appearing concept map. Once again, we've got the key word in a circle, and then we have lines radiating on the horizontal that define the key characteristics. But we also have one line on a diagonal. That would be a major detail, or a minor detail, I'm sorry, that refers to the information presented on the left. The client says anything that comes to mind. And the further detail on that is that there's no censorship allowed. So you could use either one of these patterns for an example. So what you need to do now is to look at your packet that has sample paragraphs in it. And for the first one, you need to choose one of the two paragraphs to compose your note-taking on. You don't need to do them both. But on the bottom of that page, there's space available for you to create a concept map for the key term in the paragraph that you choose. It's a really good idea to do this step in the process first. Once you have your note-taking done, then you can go on to do exercise 1 in you'll be doing both exercises for the first exercise. So you'll be doing paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. Those start on page 185. On 185, you can easily pick out what the word that's going to be defined is because it's in boldface. It's branding. And in the second example, again, boldface comes to your aid to help you understand that the term that you're going to be defining is Supreme Court. Good luck on these exercises.